Welcome back to the deep dive. So, you've sent us a stack of source material today, and it's all focused on one of the absolute toughest junctions in adult life. We're talking about high stakes relational choices. Often, when you're juggling these intense, conflicting feelings for two different people,
Hmm.
it's a situation where the immediate emotional chaos just seems designed to derail any rational, long-term thinking.
And that's really the core challenge we're tackling. When
Yeah.
you're at that kind of crossroads, the present moment feels, well, it feels overwhelming and
Yeah.
completely unique to you. But our mission today is to cut through that noise. We're going to try and step outside of the emotion, look at some data, and then use some really powerful foresight tools to help you figure out the most sustainable path forward.
So, calculated thinking.
Exactly. Calculated long-term thinking, not just reacting to what feels so regent right now.
Absolutely. The sources we've pulled together really focus on two things that kind of work together. First, there's a sobering statistical reality check on relationships that begin with, let's say, turmoil.
Yeah.
And second, a really practical, almost clinical decision framework. It's known as the 10-10-10 rule. It's all about replacing intuition with structure when the stakes are just so high.
It is. We have to acknowledge that while every personal story, of course, has its nuances, human relational patterns,
Hmm.
they're remarkably predictable.
Yeah.
And if you can understand the pattern, you can preempt the disappointment.
Okay, so let's jump straight into the numbers because this feels like the necessary cold shower.
It is.
If a relationship begins because one partner chooses to leave a committed union for a new person, what do the studies, the long-term studies, actually say about the viability of those new connections?
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. You are doing important work.
It feels so counterintuitive when the passion is at an all-time high.
It does, but we have to look at the history and the trends. They're found in studies tracking relational success, data often published in journals on family psychology,
Hmm.
and they're undeniably discouraging for these new unions. The first hurdle is just longevity. Most
Hmm.
relationships that start this way, what some researchers call revolving door relationships, they just don't endure long enough to establish any real stability.
Okay, so what does not enduring actually look like on a timeline? Are we talking a few years or is it much shorter?
It's much shorter. And this is probably the most difficult fact to digest, but very few of these connections last longer than a single
Oh,
year.
in year, wow.
Yeah, that intense initial rush, that feeling of being validated and seen, it often just burns itself out once the complicated logistics of a separation and merging families really settle in. The new partner stops being a refuge and, well, they just start being a partner.
That is a brutal reality check. Because if you're the person in this scenario right now, you're likely experiencing the peak of excitement, of passion. Everything feels right. It feels like destiny.
It does. But we have to look past that most common outcome and then consider the next data point. Because even for the few relationships that manage to survive past that first very challenging year,
The ones that try to become second marriages.
right, they face another really serious issue. A significantly higher divorce rate compared to first marriages that started more, let's say, traditionally.
Okay, let's stop and unpack that. Why? I mean, if two people fought hard, they sacrificed a lot, and they overcame enormous obstacles just to be together, shouldn't that fight for the relationship create a stronger bond? Why would the stats show more instability?
That's a great question, and it's really where the psychology of trust and foundation comes in.
Mm.
The data suggests that success isn't just about intense feelings. It's about structural integrity. When a relationship starts with infidelity, it inherits this trust residue. Even if the new couple trusts each other, the foundation itself is built on secrecy and broken promises to other people.
So the ability to break a commitment is now like baked into the couple's origin story.
Exactly. It sets a precedent. And you often see heightened levels of suspicion, particularly when things get stressful. Life gets tough, a job loss, an illness. And instead of immediately trusting the new partner, that historical pattern of infidelity, the very thing that brought them together, it often resurfaces as a source of paranoia.
So the excitement was adrenaline, but stability requires trust.
Deep, boring trust. And that takes a conflict-free start that just wasn't there.
That makes the data make so much more sense. It's not just random failure. It's tied to the compromised architecture at the start.
And what's fascinating here is the underlying psychological reason why this happens, why the intensity fades and the statistics play out like this. It's the difference between what we call limerence and attachment.
Limerence. Okay, that term is key here. Can you define that for us?
Sure, limerence is that Intense, intoxicating infatuation. It's a state driven by dopamine and adrenaline that fuels the secrecy, the longing, the passion. You're seeing the idealized version of the person. This is what's driving the decision in that early chaotic phase.
So it's a chemical state.
It's a temporary hormonal state.
Hmm.
It's a high that cannot possibly be sustained when you're, navigating shared tax returns and arguing about who cleans the cat litter.
I appreciate that very relatable image. So the high intensity emotion that feels like proof of making the right choice is in reality a temporary neurochemical state.
Precisely. And once you remove the drama, the secrecy, the novelty,
Hmm.
that limerence has to transition into stable, long-term attachment. That's the bonding of oxytocin and vasopressin,
Yeah.
the kind of bond you probably developed, however complicated, with your former spouse. And if the new partner just lacks the core character traits for that long-term stable attachment, the relationship collapses. Right back into those grim statistics we just talked about.
Okay. So we have this massive mismatch, a life-altering decision that's being driven by an unreliable, short-lived emotional high. If we know that our present feelings can't be trusted to predict the future, we need a way to force that foresight.
Yes.
How do we do that? How do we deliberately look beyond the present emotional chaos?
We have to substitute feeling with a calculated, structured examination of the future. And the solution here is the 10-10-10 rule.
The 10-10-10 rule.
Yeah. This framework was popularized by the decision-making expert and former Harvard Business Review editor Susie Welch. It's designed to give you perspective by forcing you to mentally time travel. It asks you to answer 3 specific questions based on 3 distinct timelines.
And naming the originator really grounds this. This isn't just some pop psychology. It's a strategy tool being applied to our lives. Okay, let's look at the first 2 timelines, the short and the midterm.
The first scenario is simple. 10 days from now, if you make the choice today, let's say, separating from your spouse to immediately pursue the new relationship, what are the consequences in just over a week?
Okay.
You visualize that initial fallout. This phase is important because it actually validates the intensity of your current emotions. You feel powerful, maybe validated, the passion's peaking, but that's all this scenario is really good for. Just checking in on that immediate emotional high.
So it acknowledges the feeling, but then the rule immediately slams the brakes on that emotional momentum.
Exactly, because the next question asks, 10 months from now, this is the reality check. This is where the rubber really hits the road. 10 months is long enough for the logistical nightmare to become routine. The divorce papers are filed, finances are split, new living arrangements are set. If you chose the new partner, the initial excitement is gone, and it's replaced by the mundane reality of shared living, conflict resolution, and the emotional toll of dealing with the wreckage of your old life.
And this is where the statistics we talked about start to make sense, isn't it?
It is.
The 10-month mark is when you realize your new partner might be fantastic in a secret hotel room, but terrible at, say, conflict resolution when the utilities bill is late. Or maybe they handle their children poorly. Or they just haven't shown up with the emotional depth needed to build something real.
Yes. That sparkle, that novelty effect, it dies down right around this time. You realize they also snore, and they leave their dirty dishes in the sink. But more seriously, it's when the why of the relationship gets tested. Was it built on a shared future vision, or just on escaping the misery of the past?
And if it was just escape?
If it was escape, the 10-month mark is where the new partner starts to look suspiciously like the old partner, just with fewer shared memories.
That visualization technique is so crucial. It takes all the heat out of that short-lived 10-day scenario. It forces you to project past the dopamine high and into the logistical grind. But the true test, the one that really gives clarity, is the final projection.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, to stability and long-term satisfaction, the third scenario is the true measure of a person's character. 10 years from now, this is the one that demands total honesty with yourself.
10 years is a lifetime. What really differentiates this view from the others?
Well, by 10 years, the relationship, whichever one you chose, will have accrued history, good and bad. The novelty isn't just gone, it's a distant memory. You will have faced economic downturns, professional failures, health crises, the enormous stress of blending or raising families. This is where you see the fundamental character of the person and your own capacity for resilience.
So the question isn't, do I still feel passionate about this person? It's more like, if I am deeply sick in bed with the flu, or if we lose half our savings, is this the person whose hand I want to be holding, whose judgment I trust when things are truly terrible?
That is precisely the question. The rule forces you to look at whether the person is a good partner for a party or a good partner for a siege. And crucially, it forces you to acknowledge that by the 10-year mark, Regret is often structural. If you chose the relationship primarily for that 10-day excitement, the 10-year cost, the disruption to your family, finances, your identity, it might feel way too steep.
So the source material is very clear on this. The more detailed you can get in visualizing these three scenarios, 10 days, 10 months, 10 years, the more rational and less emotionally compromised your ultimate decision is going to be. It moves the discussion from who do I love more right now to which of these people am I actually equipped to build a shared endurance project with.
It simplifies all the complexity by focusing on enduring character. The core takeaway for you is this. You are looking for the person, whether that's the original spouse after some renewed commitment, or the new partner, who you are truly willing to build a future with and navigate life's inevitable challenges together. Not just the person who makes the current moment feel less painful.
So, to bring it all together, what does this all mean? We started this deep dive with cold, hard statistics that signal a very high risk for relationships built on intensity and turmoil.
Very high failure rates, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially around that 1-year mark.
And then we moved to this structured foresight tool, the 10-10-10 rule, to force a long-term, non-emotional perspective.
And knowledge is only valuable when it's understood and applied, right? This process demands that you differentiate between that temporary, exciting limerence of the 10-day scenario and the stable, reliable willingness required to face decades of difficulty as a unit.
Yeah.
You have to look for the capacity for an enduring partnership.
And this all brings us back to that psychological shift we talked about earlier. The fact that intense passion eventually, always, settles into stable familiarity. So if the success of any relationship over a decade relies not on that dizzying high of the new, but on the capacity for stability, familiarity, endurance. If the 10-year success criteria is basically a measure of character and stability, does that mean that the decision to leave a long-term marriage for a new person, even if they feel like a better fit, is always prioritizing short-term intensity over the proven structure of long-term endurance? Something to mull over as you explore these ideas further.
Please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. If you want to overcome betrayal, break toxic cycles, take control of your relationship choices, read How to Deal with a Love Triangle. The link is below the video.